In my experience, shame is one of the largest energies that can come from a parent that can really injure a child and develop parts and protectors. So being aware of our shaming parts that shame our children, and obviously that's going to mean that we have to know our own shamers inside of us. So being really aware of what shame is and our shaming and shamers, inner shamers and outer shamers, very, very important. And when I work with parents, I have them talk about one child and just go inside and find all their parts that get triggered by that child. And then we work with those parts. Because what happens is a parent will take their child personally. And that's when the disconnection happens. That's when the shame comes in. That's when the child interprets, I'm bad, I've let my parents down, there's something wrong with me, if the parent gets upset. So for a parent to heal their parts and unburden their parts so they can be present to their child, heart to heart, and also to know that their child has self-energy and to draw on that self-energy all the time. With all the parts that are all wild all over the place, to pull and draw on the essence of them. So, and the parents have it, and also self-care. Right. Self-care so that the parents' parts can have rest and unburdening themselves so that they can be in their self-energy with the children.
So when children are repeatedly criticized, their core message becomes, I am unvaluable, I am unlovable. Their protectors very often will predict scenarios where they think they're going to be criticized, even when they're not. And so when that child is repeatedly criticized, it becomes their internal voice. It becomes their internal dialogue of this is who I am. And they take cover from the world. And so they disconnect from their self. Very often disconnecting from their self. Very often believing the story that they're now hearing in their own mind. And it doesn't take much repetition in my experience. It could be, just a few times that they heard the story, but it impacted them so deeply that they take cover behind that must be true.
When children are repeatedly criticized, I see it like there's an accumulation effect of messages that are building up. And so if I'm being told, criticize really is the basic boil down, is you're not doing it right or you're not good enough. And so repeated criticism is, to me, the root of shame. And the message is, nope, that's not right. You're not doing it right. You should be better. You should be this. You're not doing it right. And it's basically like saying, almost at your core, you're not good enough. You have to be better. And so that whole piece of like you as parents should accept child for who he or she is, not to say that you wouldn't promote development and growth, but it's almost like we meet children where they are in order to help them feel comfortable enough to branch out. But if we're not meeting where they are, they're saying, I'm up here, you need to climb up here to get my love. Because when I criticize you, I'm not sharing love, I'm sharing criticism. So it's almost like Alfie Kahn talks about how when when you ask parents, like, we want kids to be creative and innovative, but then when you observe how we parent, we often get angry and upset when they don't follow our directions and they don't follow what we say needs to happen. So the message is, unless you're compliant, you don't get my love. Because oftentimes when parents are angry, it's almost like a love detachment where I walk away, I storm away, I can't talk to you right now, I'm leaving. Oh, I'm so upset by this, like I just need to have a minute. But all that messaging is saying, I can't be with you right now, you're not there. And what he promotes is that no matter where children are, if you show them, even though you're making mistakes, and even though we all make mistakes, and we're gonna figure this out together. I'm right here, and I love you, and I'm gonna be here for you. And as much as you need to get to where you want to go, to what I can suggest places you can go, but it's not that you have to be good enough for my love. So constant criticism is a message that you really need to follow my lead in order to be worthy of love. And if you don't, it's just not going to happen. So then you see this stuff play out in later in life with relationships, like, oh, I got to take care of you. I have to figure out what you want, what you need, so that you'll love me. And then it always ends up falling apart because that's exhausting. You know, so we're training our children through criticism that you have to like do stuff to be loved. And that really is telling our core being that you are just not worthy of love. And to me, that's like the biggest heartbreak. Like when you see kids' faces drop, you know, you're at a restaurant or you're at a store, or my own kids, when I say stupid things, that drop is that recognition of right now, my parent isn't thinking highly of me. And they should know that, again, that parent is the one person on the planet that will always love you. And then if we work with our own parts, we realize, well, what's triggering me about their behavior that makes me criticize? So it's not even about you. I feel like, for me, as a divorced father, and I have my kids 50-50, but there were times I realized I would get upset with their behavior. And then when I went to that part and figure out why I was upset, is because if people see my kids acting out, it might say I'm not a good enough father and I'm one of those deadbeat dads that don't know how to parent. And I had to convince that part that you have a child development degrees, you teach people how to parent, you teach people how to work with kids. I think they're going to be okay. And that part relaxed. And now when my kids are acting out, I could, from a different place, I could say, guys, I really need your help. Could we, you know, we're at the grocery store and people might not really like when we're getting crazy. Can you help me unload the groceries instead of, what the hell are you doing, guys, stop it. And then in that moment of yelling at them, it's like, right now, you're not lovable. So it's just that constant. My brother once said when he like becomes friends with people, he looks not at single occurrences, but your consistency. And that's how he chooses who could be his friend. And I think with our children, are you consistently showing that I'm going to accept you for who you are, and once in a while you slip, or is your consistent message, like constant criticism, that no, not good enough? And it's the consistency of behavior that creates these internal messages of whether or not I'm a good enough person.
I think it's like a transfer of fear, like the fear that the parent is holding or you know, within, that they're kind of, it's like a transmission. Like the kid just knows, okay, I need to be afraid. There's something to fear and I need to protect myself, or my defenses should be up. And I think our body knows that, like just our spirit feels that. And to me, that's what parts are. Parts are the parts of us that are afraid. And the spirit is the core part, or the core of us, that doesn't know, you know, doesn't need fear. I mean, if it's a present fear, you know, safety.
Right.
Yes, but if it's not something that's here yet,
Yeah.
if it's a premeditated fear, the spirit doesn't know what to do with that.
Right.
I think it's like a panic. Like it's because the parent is desperate. You know, that parent is having a desperate need to try and protect their child from some harm. And the child picks up on that. You know, their intuition and their spirit feels that there's danger somewhere. And they're not quite sure where to place it or what to do with it. So they internalize it. There must be something wrong with me. I must have done something bad. I'm bad. You know, everything about me is bad. And it can really affect their self-esteem, their confidence, which is actually what we don't want.
Right.
It's like the opposite of what the parent wants is what you get.
Yeah.
Then you have now you have more factors that get played into the fear that are likely to cause what it is you're fearing.
So what I tell parents is that when disconnect happens, that children are really good intuitors and really bad interpreters. So they feel the disconnect, they know that you're not present with them, and they intuit that, but then they come up with their own story about why. And that story usually is about themselves not being good enough, not being lovable, you know, having done something wrong, and so they're bad. So part of why attunement and connection is so important in parenting is that we want to make sure we're reflecting them and validating their experience and preventing them from coming up with those stories,
because those are the parts that become exiles if we don't acknowledge what they're experiencing or we don't allow them to have their feelings. What happens inside of children when they are repeatedly criticized is they begin to take on beliefs about themselves that are usually what we then as an adult are dealing with in the form of an exile. So if they take on a belief that I'm bad, I'm not good enough, I can't, they might believe that they're responsible for making a parent happy or for their parent's well-being. And that's too much responsibility for a child to take on. And children are really adaptable. So they will find protective, measures in order to keep themselves emotionally safe that then again create this pattern that might not necessarily be helpful. So when they're criticized over and over, that certainly beats down their self-esteem and takes away confidence, and that's going to affect their peer relationships. It can affect their ability to function in school, their confidence level. Part of our job as parents is to reflect them, but also to encourage them and provide support and help them tap into their own internal resources that they have, because they have an intuitive and natural drive for good and learning and obeying and pleasing the adults in their world. And when they feel criticized all the time, then they start playing those voices in their own head. So those become things that they start saying to themselves, and it just wears down on their self-confidence.
I'm a stupid little bitch. I should shut up moaning when I'm left on my own at night. I am fat and ugly and useless. I cry like a baby when I'm slapped. I'm horrible to have around. I don't deserve to have any friends. I never do anything right. I'm not just a stupid little bitch. I'm a nobody.